Welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line, the podcast where we meet people from business, charities and politics who are a force for good. In each episode, I'll be asking my guests about the pain and failures that have resulted in the internal changes that have made them the unique individuals they are. So if you desire change in yourself and the world around you, keep listening. Hello, my name is Paul Hargreaves. I'm the CEO of Cotswold Fair and Flourish, two businesses that put people and planet before profit. We were one of the first B Corps in the UK in 2015, and I've written two books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. I realised a few years ago that if we really were going to change the world for better, we would also need to change ourselves. The outer impact of people, planet and profit had to be mirrored by an inner change, and that's what I call my fourth bottom line.
My purpose is to help people to understand the magnificence they have within them. I've got a small list of lessons that I learned. One is about collaboration, how we collaborate as human beings. One is the fact that everyone has got something of equal value to bring to the party. But I think more than anything, it's being able to show people that unless you face adversity, you don't really know all the hidden potential you've got. And that's something that astonished me. I've got to show people how freaking magnificent they are.
My guest today is Michelle Mills-Porter. Michelle is an award-winning CEO, a tsunami survivor, a renowned human behaviour expert, and has recently been appointed as National President of the Professional Speaking Association. What Michelle witnessed in the aftermath of the Boxing Day tsunami in 2004 profoundly shifted her understanding of human behaviour. She discovered that in the face of extreme adversity, the core of our shared humanity shines brightest, revealing boundless compassion, resilience and collaboration. Indeed, one of Michelle's friends described her to me as one of the special people who genuinely wants everyone to collaborate for their own benefit, not hers. Another described her as having a heart as big as the sky. On the other hand, her husband credits her with being responsible for the Vinted delivery man upgrading his car and going on an exotic holiday recently. Michelle, welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line.
Thank you very much.
We'll get on to the tsunami later on, but I want to start talking about your early years, your childhood. Tell me a bit about your days growing up as a child.
Okay, well, my dad is from Myanmar, so he's half Burmese and half British, and he grew up in Burma and came over to the UK when he was 17. And I was a very dark baby. My mum used to love the fact that I'd go brown as a berry if she left me out in the sun, so she did that quite a lot. So I was always very different. I had a brother who was 10 and a half months older than me. And he wasn't dark, and then I had a sister 3.5 years later, and so I grew up at school always being a little bit different, but actually really loving that and celebrating it. Used to get on my little soapbox and I was always a very different little child. Did you ever see my picture, my 10-year-old picture?
I think I did, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
I for my 10th birthday, this is how liberal my parents were, they said, what do you want for your 10th birthday? And all I wanted was a Jackson perm. So I had this beautiful, long, straight, dark hair, and all of a sudden I had this huge afro. It looks like a wig.
Wow.
I thought I was cock of the walk.
I have seen that photo.
Yeah.
What were the values that were instilled in you as a child?
For me, this is a very big subject for me, as you know. I do a lot of work on values, and I think a lot of it is in your formative years. That's where they're created, and then it becomes part of your DNA. But you can have people that have exactly the same experiences and exactly the same upbringing, the same parents, the same culture, the same religion, but actually form different values from that. So it was very much, my parents literally gave us the shirts off their back. You know, they worked so hard. We never really had any money. And they would, do 2 or 3 jobs and always do something extra at Christmas, like making earrings or, selling jeans or something to get a bit of extra income. But we were never short on love or presents.
Do you know how unusual that is? Most people, I don't know. I can only talk for myself, obviously, but my childhood wasn't really like that.
Oh.
But I don't think many were. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, obviously, but I think there's a love deficit in many families.
Yeah, that's sad, isn't it? I mean, my parents were very much in love. They still are, you know, they're very, very much in love, and they were each other's first love. They and they're still as much in love as they ever were. So that's something that I always wanted for myself. You know, I always wanted to have that kind of relationship. Now it gives me the ick. I don't want it anymore. It's too sloppy for me.
What about and we'll talk about your spirituality later on, but was there a spiritual element to your upbringing or not?
Mum and Dad worked so very, very hard. I remember once saying, I want to go to Sunday school. And they were like, oh, Sunday's the only morning that we get to lie in. So, but yeah, I don't know what it is. When I was younger, I felt quite religious. I remember sitting in a sunbeam, playing my recorder and feeling that Jesus was giving me the notes to write down. And I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was the fact that, you know, it was a Church of England school that I went to and we were taught that stuff. I really don't know. But the older I got, the less kind of religious I felt, I think.
Religious and spirituality are two different things
Very,
in my view.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I agree.
there's too much religion in the world and not enough spirituality. Later we'll discuss that. But who would you say was the first person that believed in you as a child?
Oh my gosh. My mum. My mum instilled everything in me, the romance, the love for arts, the belief in myself. She told me that I could be anything I wanted to be.
She sounds amazing.
She's lovely. I love my mum.
I'll have to meet her one day.
Yeah, she's very shy. She won't want to meet you.
Oh, definitely not want to meet me. Did you want to be anything when you grew up?
I wanted to be a ballet dancer.
Did you?
Everything in my life was about ballet. You know, Mum says that I used to dance on my toes even before I was walking, and I was very elegant, very graceful. So she had me going to ballet classes when I was 4 years old. I remember on my 4th birthday, I remember watching all of my aunts and uncles come in and making them all sit down and performed for them, do my little ballet performance for them. And if I drew a picture, it would be of the ballerina. Everything was ballet. My mum took me to see Giselle when I was just little, and I remember I was a tiny little girl and I was holding a hand and we were walking in the Hippodrome. It's the poshest thing I'd ever seen. Red carpets and chandeliers, and wow, what an experience. And yeah, it was very special.
So, I mean, I know you've got a very strong drive for collaboration. We saw that in the intro. Is that coming from your childhood, or has that come from later on?
I don't know. I think maybe I was always, as a child, I was always the odd one out. So I was born at the end of August, and for that reason, when all of my friends left nursery and went to primary school, I wasn't in the catchment, so I was left behind. And then when I started school, something happened in terms of the change of the end of year. And instead of going forward 1 year, I was jumped forward 2 years. And all of a sudden, I was in the same school year as my big brother. Oh. And it was really unsettling because when you have those formative relationships, I never had them. I didn't have a best friend at school until I was 8 years old. So, you know, everyone used to only let me play if I was it in Tig. Or, yeah, it's true. Or if I was the wolf in What Time Is It, Mr. Wolf? Oh, yeah. And I didn't have a clan, and that's because I was moved around, and I firmly believe that the teachers were responsible for that. And it was only when a new girl came to school that my teacher said, who wants to be her monitor, which is like their friend. I put my hand up and she chose me, and I'm glad that she did, because that's the first time that I had a real kind of strong relationship. So I think the reverse of that is I always wanted to know what made people fit in, what made them get on with other people, and why was I left out on the edge, you know? And I guess I always wanted to try and understand that. So from a reverse point of view, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that could have gone another way, though, couldn't it? It could have.
Well, I could have turned into a serial killer. What are you trying
possibly,
to say?
Possibly, yeah. No, but, some people, it sounds like that was a negative experience, but somehow it's been turned to a positive. I think because now your whole thing is bringing people together to do stuff, and in effect you were excluded from doing anything with anyone else. So it's the very opposite.
It is, and I think, yeah, it's what you do with the lessons you learn, isn't it? And I remember when I was at high school, and it didn't stop, because when we moved house, I went to a new high school, so again I was uprooted and didn't really have those connections. But what I learned is that actually being the class clown is what really helped me to build relationships with people. And actually looking after others. I loved being able to look after others, and if anyone was being bullied, they'd come to me, and I'd look after them. So I guess that's the first sense I had of wanting to look after others, and a sense of fairness, and wanting everyone to feel like they belonged.
So let's dig into this sense of purpose. So what would you say your purpose in life is? Is it what I just said about the collaboration thing?
I think for me, my purpose is to help people to understand the magnificence they have within them, because this does stem back from the tsunami, and I've got a small list of lessons that I learned in the aftermath. One is about collaboration, how we collaborate as human beings. One is the fact that everyone has got something of equal value to bring to the party. Another is the fact that we are motivated by an unseen force. But I think more than anything, it's being able to show people that unless you face adversity, you don't really know all the hidden potential you've got. And that's something that astonished me. And that's the one thing I remember thinking, I've got to show people how freaking magnificent they are.
Well, this is very much part of the theme of this podcast. It's through our adversity, through trauma, through failure, that makes us the people we were born to be. Most people run away from adversity and run away from that stuff because they don't like pain. But I know from what I already know of you that was a profound experience that has made you a very different person, and probably a more purposeful person in your life. So we can't really carry on anymore without finding out a bit more about the tsunami story. So
we went on a diving holiday. We learnt to dive with a dive team from Bromsgrove, and we went out. I think there were 14 of us in total. We went out there to Sri Lanka, and we were staying at the Poseidon Dive Centre in Hikkaduwa. We woke up in the morning and the tide was so far out. People were really excited, saying, look, you can go and walk around the rocks that we used to snorkel around, and they were really excited. But the Sri Lankans had put on a fantastic party for us the night before, and I was suffering with a very bad head. I managed to make it down to breakfast, but I thought, there is no way I'm going diving. So I said that I wanted to go back to bed and nurse my hangover, and I did. Our room was on the 3rd floor of the hotel, and it was quite a while later when I remember hearing all this crashing and banging and door slamming and shouting, and I thought, oh my gosh, who have they let in this hotel? Do they not know that there's people trying to, nurse their hangover? And I grabbed my pillow and I pulled it over my head and tried to go back to sleep. And then a little bit later on, I remember hearing what sounded like a storm outside. There was all this gushing and water, and then this incessant banging, like bang, bang, bang.
So what kind of time of day was this?
I don't know. I wasn't looking at my watch. Got
so
no idea.
Your husband was... Well, I don't think he was your husband then, was he?
He wasn't my husband,
no.
But he was. He was nursing his hangover
with
me.
He was
yes.
with you, right? Okay.
So we were kind of jolted out of bed with that banging and that noise. And Stu went to the window and opened the curtain, and I just remember his words. He just went, I think you better come and look at this. And I knew something was wrong. I shot to the window, looked out the window. That banging noise was a boat being slammed into the side of the hotel at our level on the 3rd floor. There was nothing but water all around us. And that sound, that whooshing sound and all the water, that was the palm trees that were, being washed around in the water. And it was just everywhere. And it was just like the end of the world. It was like, what on earth has happened?
Because of that events, we all know what a tsunami is then, but I don't know actually, but I don't think there had been one for a long time before. So you wouldn't really know what was going on, would you?
And it's strange, the feeling of kind of, abandonment and guilt and all sorts of things happen. But the feeling of abandonment right at the beginning was bizarre. It was like, why did nobody tell us? Why are there no alarms? What is this? Is it a local phenomena? Does this happen all the time? And I actually remember grabbing my phone and I sent a message to my sister and to Stuart's sister, and it said, there's been a bit of a flood, but we're okay. And I remember thinking, why did nobody warn us? No, there was no screaming, no shouting, and all of a sudden I went, duh, yeah, there was. You thought it's people mucking around. That was obviously when it had hit.
Right.
And we'd just gone back to bed and slept.
I mean, good you sent that message, though, because they probably may have heard about it by then in back in the UK.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, people always say it's that first message. They just need to know whether their loved ones are okay. And I remember my sister was very quick off the mark and told my parents and everything. Stuart's sister was actually nursing her own hangover. So his parents didn't know for a long while whether we were okay or not. It was only when my sister drove around to their house to tell them that you were okay that they found out. But they'd got a good 3 hours of not knowing. And
so how did you get out of the hotel?
so it took a long while for the water to recede. It kept coming higher and then lower, and we didn't know if we were going to get out at all. But it came to a stage where it had reduced enough for us to half wade and half walk out of the hotel. So initially it was up to the ceiling of the first floor. We just couldn't get out. But when it was low enough, I remember, we were just kind of like half wading and half swimming out of the hotel. And we went to the other side of the Gall Road. And 2 of our friends were actually sheltering there. And I remember they were saying, come over to us. And when we got over there, I'm like, why do you want us to be in this shack when we were in a perfectly sound hotel? And they said, have a look. And we turned around and it looked like the whole hotel was lilting towards the sea. And the swimming pool had gone and the bridge had gone. And it was total devastation. It was.
So I think you ended up on a hill, didn't you, with a group of people?
We did. So so Cammy, who owned the dive centre, it was some hours later when we saw him coming down what used to be the Gall Road with a load of his boat boys, and we waved at him and shouted. And he just shouted something in Sinhalese, and all of a sudden we were being force-marched inland. And we were force-marched inland for about, force-marched. That sounds like under duress. We couldn't, we were very glad to get away. But we were kind of like half running and half walking, hoping that the tsunami wasn't coming after us again. And for about two miles inland, we came to this very steep kind of gravel path, and I just thought, I've got nothing left in the tank. There's nothing left here. I've got nothing to give. And then Stu's hand was on my back and he just pushed me up that hill. And we got to the top and these big gates opened. And that was Jimmy Lal's garden. Jimmy Lal was Cammy's uncle, and he was very senior in the village. So he owned a fleet of trucks and a fleet of ships, and he'd opened up his house and his garden to refugees.
So were the people in your group from Bromsgrove, were they all there by then or not?
Some of them were, some of them weren't.
Right,
so they were scattered. Some of them were, went straight there. Some of them were injured and went to hospital. Some of them were taken to, churches and pagodas and things like that. But by the time we got there, the majority of people were there. It was bizarre. There was, over 100 people, all speaking different languages, all wearing different clothes. What they were wearing the second that tsunami hit, we were all gathered here in this garden, and that garden.
And this is the big moment for you, I think, isn't it? You talk about compassion, resilience, collaboration. What was it? What was happening at that point to you, really, inside?
I think. Okay, this is something I don't really talk about very often, because it's easy when you've got hindsight. So it's easy to look back and think, that's where I learned that lesson. But at the time, it's a very different feeling. There was actually, and I don't really know how to explain this, but there was actually a feeling of, oh, well. That's not a lack of compassion for other people, but it's like, what can I do? There I am, CEO, I've got 14 staff. Am I worrying about my sales figures? Am I worrying about what they're doing? No, it's just like, okay, the universe is in charge for a change. So for me, as a CEO who always carried the weight of the world on their shoulders, it was almost like that weight had been lifted, and now I just have to go with the flow. What could I do to help others? Who needs help? What can I do? So a lot of who you are in your day-to-day life is turned up on its head, and it's just like, it doesn't matter what your title is, doesn't matter what car you drive, doesn't matter what you do for a living. This is flatten the hierarchy. Everyone in that garden is equally as important.
Yeah.
And it's what you can bring to the party that other people can't do that is massively valuable.
I think that's the stripping away, isn't it, of the external stuff that we all think is really important that actually isn't. And we talked briefly about this before we started recording. It's very, very different. But for me, I had a few experiences over a number of years that basically stopped me thinking of Paul Hargreaves as CEO and started to think about Paul Hargreaves, the person. Because we're so wrapped up in what we do, aren't we, and who we are and what position we are in society. And I think those kind of events, whether it's some kind of big failure or marriage breakdown, or in your case, a tsunami, it just strips away all the externalities. Is that a word?
We'll put it in the dictionary for you, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it does. And I think for me, when I talk about seeing straight through to the core of humanity, that's the thing. When you see people that you think are a complete donkey, there's a couple of them, and I just didn't have time of day for them. When you see that they literally have just put their life on the line for a complete stranger, makes you realise that actually our reset button is full of compassion and benevolence. It's there. It's in our DNA.
Yes.
That was a beautiful thing to see. Everyone coming together, everyone trying to help, and they weren't thinking about themselves. We had one guy that came to sit with us, and he was saying, how are you doing and how are you feeling? And when I asked him the same questions, we found out that he was a Samaritan, and that's what he was doing, was going around helping everyone. He actually didn't know where his wife was. He actually didn't know where his children were. And yet he was spending his time checking on everyone else. And that's what bowled me over. Jimmy Lal opening up his home, allowing everyone, total strangers, to sleep in his bed. He drained his well for us and, had all the water boiled so that you had something to drink. It was just this natural giving. And it's something that was really beautiful.
But human beings are beautiful, aren't they?
I think so. There's a lot of people, when I tell this story, a lot of people say, oh, that wouldn't happen in this country. I can guarantee it.
I don't agree with that. I mean, have you read Rutger Bregman's book, Humankind?
You're always asking me whether I've read stuff, aren't you? With my neurodivergence, I'm not good at reading. I could have, but I get bored. I like listening to pop songs and singing when I'm in the car. Okay.
So basically his premise is the vast majority of human beings are kind, compassionate.
Here's my belief. My belief from what I witnessed is that actually we are born beautiful. It is a white sheet of paper, and it's the experience we have, the illnesses we have, mental illness, other things, and all of that negative experience that pours layers of dirt on top of that piece of paper. In my opinion, when you have a life or death situation like that, quite often it goes straight back to that piece of paper. Everything's stripped away, and it's like, there's your DNA. That's who you are. And I truly believe that the majority of human beings have this benevolence and compassion within them.
I totally agree with that. Interested to know, obviously, loads of different cultures there. Was there anything noticeable with how different cultures reacted in that situation?
I think so. I mean, I don't want to spoil the story, but Stuart and I were not married at the time, but because I saw him put my life before his, I thought, I'm not letting him get away, and we decided that we would get married if we managed to get out of there alive. So a year later we went back and we got married on the beach, and we decided to have a Buddhist wedding, and that was because during the tsunami it was the Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist people that made the biggest impact on us. And I'll never forget, it was actually Jimmy Lal that told me this story, and I'm gonna muck it up, but he told us this story one night about the essence of Buddhism, and he basically told us this story about this man had this fantastic meal, and he was full, and he went out to the road and he saw a cat. And that cat had kittens, and they didn't have any food. So to cut the story short, he got down on his hands and knees and he made himself sick, and he provided food for the kittens and the cat. Not the best meal, but the whole essence of Buddhism is kind of tied up in that memory for me. And seeing them give everything they had to everyone else, and seeing the beauty of their benevolence and their compassion really, really stirred me. And so we had a Buddhist wedding. And it's also because we don't know really what they were saying.
Because an important part of Buddhism is this nature of suffering, isn't it, as well? And I don't know exactly, but I think they would say we're really only formed as humans through the suffering we've been through, whereas, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of people in our culture here in the UK run away from suffering. They don't like the pain of it, but it's through the suffering that we become those healers for the world, I believe. Yeah. I mean, you talk about something called kintsugi, don't you? Which
I do. I'm going to drop that actually, Paul, because I've noticed now that Claudia Winkleman is using on the flipping Head and Shoulders advert now. Everyone's got on the bandwagon.
Really?
Yeah. So I talk about kintsugi in my keynote of like 10 years ago. I talk about the fact that the Japanese put together a piece of pottery by using gilt gold, and they believe that the vase is more beautiful and more valuable because of it. And I've always said that's exactly the same with humanity. People that have been broken, they are more beautiful because they have more compassion and more empathy. So they're more beautiful for it. And they're actually more valuable to society because those are the people that will help others to get through. They will guide others and so that they don't fall down the same path. So for me, kintsugi is a beautiful analogy to use with humanity. And, those that have suffered can be the very best of human beings.
So would you say it's essential that you have to suffer, you have to go through something, midlife crisis, whatever we call it, in your case, tsunami?
Well, one of the things that I do as an exercise, particularly when I'm dealing with schools rather than adult audiences, is I talk about what adversity is, and I get everyone to stand up, and they have to stand up and stay standing up if they've been through adversity. And at the beginning, they're like, I haven't been through adversity. And you start talking about what adversity is. Have you lost a pet? Have you lost a grandparent? Has anyone moved school? Has anyone done this, that, or the other? And quite often you'll get the very stubborn, cool kid that's sitting down at the end and thinking, I'm not standing up. So my last question is, who's ever been through a global pandemic? And of course, they're forced to stand up. You cannot get through life without having adversity. I wouldn't say that it's essential to be a good person, but I don't think that you can get through life without adversity. That's what life is. It is lots of little pieces of adversity thrown at you, and it's how you get through that determines your resilience and what you bring to society.
Yeah, and I think it brings depth as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we were very good at living life on the superficial side. I know for me, that helps me go a lot deeper in my life. There's a depth in me that wouldn't have been there unless I'd been through some shit that I've been through. But
there's a feeling for me when I came back from being in the tsunami. I remember thinking, now I understand when people come back from wars, when people come back from tragedy, there's a different level of understanding and compassion, and it makes you feel that you are almost on a different spiritual level or a different understanding, and it brings people together when there's shared adversity. Then that can really bring people together. And I remember thinking, when the global pandemic hit, part of me in my subconscious was like, it's all right, kids, we've got this. I've been through something like this. I recognise it. I can bring something to the party here. So there's that feeling that you suddenly get.
Yes, well, that's exactly, when you were talking about the tsunami, that's exactly what came to mind for me. The fact that everyone behaved incredibly well, was compassionate, looking after others rather than themselves. We had a touch of that, didn't we, during the pandemic, in the early days anyway. Sadly, a lot of that probably has dissipated since. But
well, you know that we've just had the Professional Speaking Association Summit, and actually in my closing keynote, if you were there, Paul, you'd know that actually this is what I talked about. I know you had to be in Paris, so I will recap and just let you know what I talk about. So what I say is the fact that during the pandemic, I think that we did see a bit of that compassion. When you are standing out in the street clapping for the NHS and the care workers and all that kind of stuff, there's that feeling of huge compassion, being connected to people that you don't even know. There's that connection. It's beautiful. But for me, that's like it's like being on a surfboard. So when you feel it, it's fantastic. You're riding along, you are going to fall off. That is going to change. Our job is to try and get back on the surfboard. And unfortunately, human beings are like elastic bands. So what we have to do, if we want to move forward and want to learn from those lessons, we have to keep stretching the elastic band time after time after time until it's stretched so much that it can't ever go back to its original shape. So it's that stretching. So when people say that, you need to learn something 3 or 4 times before it sticks, you need to keep going through it, that's unfortunately what's going to happen with humanity. We will have to have 1 pandemic, 2 pandemics, something else happen, and eventually, some people will get it immediately, but some people will take 3 or 4 times before it actually, connects, I think.
Yeah.
That's my analogy.
You've touched on neurodiversity a couple of times, and this is, I know, something you talk about, and trying to get businesses in particular, a lot of business people listening to this, to see the potential of employing neurodivergent people and the fact they can actually offer more than many other people can. I mean, we employ 4 or 5 neurodivergent people in our retail business, and they're a wonderful addition to the team. They are incredibly efficient at what they do. They're incredibly loving as well, actually. And people love having them there, customers and other stuff alike. So just talk to us a bit about that and what your experience is of that.
Well, I think I'm very late diagnosed, but it was a bit of a no shit Sherlock moment really for me. So it was great. Being a behaviour profiler, my profile kind of looks rather polar anyway. So I kind of knew this was coming. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to own it and say, I want to show, especially young people, I want to show them how this is not a disability, how actually you can celebrate your superpowers. Yeah. Now, in the world of neurodivergence, I have a keynote called The Astonishing Advantages of the Neurodivergent, and I have a couple of groups, neurodivergent speakers group. And what I find is that there are a lot of people that dislike you talking about the superpowers of neurodivergence because they have had very hard times or their children have had very hard times. So we have to be really careful about how we do it. But if you look back in history at nearly all of the great people that made changes on a societal level, and the great geniuses in history, most of them are screaming neurodivergence.
Yeah, most entrepreneurs are neurodivergent, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think it's time we change the label. I mean, there's nothing divergent about it.
I hesitated using the word, but we have to use the language we've been given. But yes, I agree with that.
We have to change it because I do thousands of behaviour profiles, and when people are saying, 25% of the population are neurodivergent, according to my figures, it's more like 75. So let's stop calling it divergence. People are calling it neurospicy. I like calling it neurosparkly. It's just us. We just are who we are. But, the most important thing, and this boils back down to one of the lessons after the tsunami, understand what it is that people bring to the party. It's very simple. When you have a brilliant salesperson who is fantastic at building relationships with people and he's dreadful at paperwork, how many people...
That's all salespeople, isn't it?
If they've got that talent, then, there's usually an opposite. And there are so many organisations that are saying, okay, Paul, you need to really improve on your paperwork. No, let him sparkle. Don't dull his sparkle. Give the paperwork to someone else. Let someone who loves paperwork do it, and let everyone shine in the area where they're strongest.
I think the dial has started to shift a bit. I've noticed in the last year more encouraging noises on this area, but we've still got a hell of a long way to go. Why do you think businesses haven't seen the potential here?
I think I'm thinking about a couple of businesses I'm working with at the moment, and you think that we understand that, businesses have to be people-centric. I say that I will not work with companies unless they're people-passionate, which is, one of the things that I love about you and your business, Paul, the fact that you're so passionate about it. But actually, there are very few organisations that really are people passionate. If you look, I'm just talking about the neurodivergence here. There are so many organisations that say, yes, we've got this in place, we've got that in place, we have a neurodivergence team, but that team is set up to stop them being sued. That team is set up to make sure that people who are neurodiverse can't complain and they have everything they need. What they're not doing is saying, oh, you're neurodiverse, let's see where you sparkle and how brightly you can shine. That's what they're not doing. So they're not pushing it. So they're very much looking at at their people issues as a problem to fix. They're not thinking, how can we allow our people, how can we unleash our people power?
That's HR through and through, isn't it? Many businesses.
In many, yeah. But I've just come across one company where everyone at the top level are very process-driven, very data-driven, and they're actually in a people business. They're not communicating with their entire workforce because they're not speaking the same language. And they've forgotten that actually this has to be about people.
All businesses are, aren't they?
You and I think like that, Paul, but there's going to be loads of people out there switching off now going, no, I don't believe that. It's not about people, it's about the figures.
Don't switch off, folks. I think... Look, I still have much to learn here, but I think I have learnt that actually I'm not very good at much. I know what I'm good at, and that's a very few things, and I know what I'm not good at, which is many more things. I think there's this expert mentality, isn't there, quite often? Well, there has been in business. The people on the leadership team are the experts and everyone else is somehow less important. And it's a load of absolute bollocks.
Yeah, why don't you stick them all in Jimmy Lal's garden and see who survives?
Well, this is the point, yeah. But there's a horrifying lack of self-awareness in many businesses and many business leaders.
It's what is it? Is it ego? Is it God complex? What is it? What makes you think that because you earn more money, then you're better than someone that doesn't? What is it that makes you think because you've got the title, because you've got the car, that you're a better person than somebody that chooses a career that is full of love?
I think some of it's ego, but I think a lot of it is just this kind of doing mentality where they can't see above the weeds. I mean, I know for me, I was a doing leader for most of my time, leading things and various things from sports teams to businesses to charities. The last few years I've learned to be, and that's when you start to see other people in their humanity. Because if you're doing, we never look up. It's head to the grindstone. I mean, I was struck by what you said about your mum and dad, because most parents that I know, the two I've had anyway, were incredibly hard workers. It's like they didn't have time or room or headspace for love. Your situation was different to that, which is pretty unusual, I think. A lot of hard-working families, there isn't love there. You obviously had the benefits of that. But it's the same in business, isn't it? We've got this productivity god that we can't look up from, and we can't see human beings in the business. I mean, I hate the term HR anyway. Human resources, what's that all about? They're not bloody resources. They're people.
Yeah, and do you know what? I only wrote about this earlier today, actually. I went on a course, a leadership course recently, Penny Ferguson's course, The Living Leader. And one thing that I realised is Penny said to me, how do you feel it's changed? And I said, you know what, I realised that I wasn't a leader. When I was a CEO, I wasn't a leader. I thought I was a leader, but actually I wasn't. I was a really bad leader. I was a manager.
Yeah.
But actually that organisation were all in support of me. And the second I turned my back, it kind of fell apart. That's not a business, and that's not leadership. What I've learned about leadership and what I demonstrated at the PSA conference is actually when you are ready to say, I shine, but I don't have to shine the brightest. You shine too. You shine even brighter. Lift those people up and allow them to shine without competing. That, for me, is the difference in leadership. I used to be the person, and I remember saying, yeah, you can shine. Don't shine as bright as me, because I'm the shiniest. That's not being a leader. When you can say, yeah, I shine, you shine even brighter, that's being a leader.
I love that, actually, yeah. I mean, that is true leadership, isn't it? Serving the people you lead. I'm a terrible manager, by the way, but I think I'm okay at being a leader. I'm too disorganised to be a manager. Totally unprocessed driven.
You are a phenomenal leader. Anyone in your organisations will say that.
It's not about me, so let's move on. So
deflection.
We haven't talked about anything. A lot of things I wanted to. So we've talked about the Tsunami. So that was actually 20 years ago this year, wasn't it?
This year.
More recently, how would you say you've changed in the last 5 to 10 years?
I can only talk about the PSA conference that we've just had. You know, the fact that I'm trying those. I mean, the serendipity here is unbelievable, isn't it? The PSA has been through some adversity recently, and the lessons that were bestowed upon me 20 years ago have never been more poignant and more important to my tribe. And they're exactly the same lessons that I'm trying to get everyone involved in now. And what I did in the closing keynote was I said to everyone, if we're going to collaborate effectively, we need to share the risk. We need to step out of our comfort zone. We need to show up and bring what we've got to the party. No matter what it is, we have to bring it to the party. And we've got to share our contacts. We've got to share our glory. We've got to share our stage. And with that, I handed the stage over to a scratch band we'd put together of people in the PSA. We had, Mark Deeks, who was a choir master and keyboards. We had Julia Grace, who was a singer. We had Susan Heaton Wright on violin. Had Caroline Kavanagh on the saxophone. We had Darren Harris on the drums. We had Marina on the drums. We had Charlie Hart on the guitar. Please don't let me think that I've forgotten anyone. And anyone that could got up and used the percussion instruments. And we closed the conference by singing a Day Like This by Elbow, and literally that outro was just chiming at the end, and people were hugging and crying and all sorts, and it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. That is the riskiest thing I've ever done, closing a conference, to hand the stage over to the audience.
Very risky.
It was extremely risky, yeah. But
especially with a bunch of speakers in the room. What do you call a group of speakers, by the way? Is it a flock? Gaggle?
A gaggle? Yeah, I don't know. There's lots of speculation on that, and some of the terms are not necessarily very friendly. What I love about the Professional Speaking Association is, you said to me earlier on, there's a lot of ego in speaking, isn't there? There are very few people in the PSA, I believe, that are egotistical. It's a beautiful tribe. You know, and we're all there because we want to give back to society.
Yes, I think the egotistical ones probably don't join, do they?
I think the egotistical ones think that they want to do it on their own and they want all the glory. Actually, what you'll find, and I did a values analysis on the PSA members many years ago, 8 years ago now. I've been in the PSA for 9 years now. And 8 years ago, I did this. And the board at the time thought that people were in the association because they wanted to earn more money. So it was all about the money, the finances, how can we do better, how we can get more gigs. Actually, my values analysis proved that people were in it for the collaboration, for the cooperation, for giving back to society. And so that really did change the understanding of who we are as an organisation. And most people in the PSA have been through trauma. Paul, going back to your point, they've been through trauma or adversity, and they now want to give back to society some of the lessons they've learned.
Let's talk about spirituality. Someone I talked to as part of my research described you as distributing fairy magic, or certainly talking about it.
Who have you been talking to?
How would you define spirituality? Because interestingly, I've found that it's a word that you couldn't really use in certainly the business world a few years ago, but it's becoming more acceptable these days. But there's lots of different things in people's head when it comes to that word. So how would you define it?
For me, I think, I'm quite mixed religion. I have, my mum's family were Quakers, my dad's family were Church of England and Roman Catholic, and then, I was influenced by Buddhism and all sorts of different things. So I've never really kind of picked a religion. But
good.
There are things that have happened to me that make me truly believe that there is something, and the serendipity that we see, and when you get to a point in your life, you think, now I know why I learnt all those lessons. This is what I meant to do with it. That feeling is so powerful that you have to attribute it to something, and I don't even know what to call it. But that's spirituality for me. I have a Facebook page called Friends of Angels, and it's not religious, and it's not really about angels. It's just a lovely place for people that like nice stuff to share it when they have it in abundance, and actually to ask for help when they haven't. And it's just a beautiful little page where people are just free to say whatever they want.
I love the word serendipity, and I think it happens more these days for me. I don't know about you. I get more of those serendipitous moments popping up. And it's just a sense of, oh, good, I'm in the right place at the right time. Yeah, exactly.
This is where I'm meant to be.
I had one on the way back from that trip to Paris
that
stopped me coming to the second half of the conference. Yeah, so you know how long the Eurostars are?
Yeah.
16 carriages, I think. About 70 seats in each. And I got onto the right carriage, which makes a change, put my bag in the overhead thing, sat down, and the lady opposite me said, you don't recognise me, do you? Oh, yeah, I do actually. No, I was so tired. And then I started talking to her, and then the lady across the aisle also knew me, who hadn't been to the conference, the show I'd just been to. So what's the chances of that?
Are you sure it's not just because you're now becoming famous, Paul? Is that what it is?
No,
I think this is the thing for me, Paul. When you think about purpose, when I came back from Hikkaduwa, from the tsunami, we created the Hikkaduwa Village Fund, and together we managed to raise £100,000 in 6 months. That was because of the generosity of people that wanted to help. But actually I thought, oh my gosh, this is what it's about. All the interviews I've ever done, all those crummy commercials I did, and all the radio interviews I did, and this, that and the other, it's all for this reason. It's given me the skills to be able to be the PRO of the Hikkaduwa Village Fund and go out and raise that money. And I thought, this is it. This is my purpose. Now, after 6 months, the rest of the committee wanted to stand down, and that felt like the rug had been pulled from under my feet. This was my purpose. How can it not be? But, then years of learning about behaviour and delving into it and becoming an expert, and then writing all of my own analysis tools. Now I believe that my purpose is to help leaders to unleash their people power and to help people unleash their magnificence. But that's for now. What happens next? It doesn't mean it has to be my purpose forever.
No. Yes, and that's where some people come unstuck, isn't it?
It can be damaging, because if suddenly you think you're living your life on purpose and this is it, if that changes, then it doesn't give you any resilience. You don't have anywhere to go. But if you're constantly thinking, okay, that was it, that's done, what's next, and realise that your purpose can change, then that's just a safer place to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, purpose is, it's very overused, isn't it, these days, that word. But what do you think everyone has a purpose? It's just the ones that say they haven't discovered it yet.
Oh gosh, from a different perspective, if you look at different behaviour types, there are some people that don't ever want purpose in life. I'm going to talk about my mum. I love my mum and dad very much. My mum, when you say, if ever you want to be an animal, what animal would you be? Like, I'm a lioness or a tiger or whatever. Mum always says, I want to be a cow. And There was a saying back in when I worked with Pete Thompson and, David Heiner and people like that will say this, don't be a cow. But that's all my mum ever wanted, was to be a mum. That's her purpose. She never wanted to achieve anything else. And that's okay. So for me, purpose is about understanding, being comfortable with what you're giving to society, being comfortable with what it is. And I think purpose is very important because it's the key to longevity of life.
Yeah.
And I think I'm quoting Dr. Linda Shaw when I say that. I'm pretty sure that she would agree that there is a lot of research that says that purpose is quite often considered the key to longevity of life. People that live long lives have got real purpose.
Yes, I mean, that's definitely backed up, isn't it? By just thinking of some people I know who have lived long lives and they're very purposeful. Yeah. What do you think you'll be doing in 5 years' time?
I don't know. I love my artwork. I mean, I want to continue my work with the people reader. So I've got a very different business model. So with my analysis tools, I want to pick up the baton from William Moulton Marsden, who created DISC. He wanted the whole world to be able to access his tools, and it's not about money. It's not about how much money you can generate from it. So the analysis companies that really get my goat are the ones where you have to pay for every single report you do, and if you want any tools, you have to pay for those, and they get as much money as they can out of their practitioners. And what I'm trying to do with my model is make it available to everyone. So I'm putting the platform into the organisations that I work with, and I'm letting them drive. So I'm trying to spread it and give it to as many people as possible. And the reason I'm doing that, Paul, is because the art of understanding yourself and others shouldn't be something that you buy. It should be something that you teach freely. It should be something that we teach in school. It should be something that everyone has, to be able to use in their life moving forward. And to think that I didn't even understand about behaviour profiling and things like that until I was in my late 20s, early 30s, what a crime. Why didn't you teach it to that girl that didn't have any friends at school and help her understand what she needed to do in order to be perceived differently by others, to navigate her relationships? It's an essential tool that I think we should give to everyone, and the more I can spread it, the more I will.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you've made it open source, basically.
It's not open source as such. It is a very different model. What I'm doing is I'm putting the organisations in the driving seat, and they pay me a licence fee for it. So the licence fee, a lot of it goes back into the research and to the development and all the rest of it. But it is very much about, being fair.
What do you think will be on your tombstone?
On my tombstone, I like that she's got a heart as big as the sky. I love that. Yeah, I don't really want a lot more. I don't need any glory, I don't seek glory. I think some of the things that people say to me, this reminds me actually, when I was at sixth form, I went on a skiing holiday, and they came to an awards night, and all the kids were getting, these awards for skiing, and I was dreadful skier, so I wasn't expecting to get anything. And right at the end of the night, they gave out a very special award, and this award was for somebody who's gone out of a way for everyone and helped everyone in every situation that they could. And that award was called the Good Egg Award, and that was
like that.
That was awarded to me. So I look back now and I think, I just want to be known as a good egg.
If you were on your deathbed and had to leave one lesson behind in your life, what would it be?
I think that one lesson would have to be just appreciate that you can move mountains when you collaborate effectively. You can do so much more when you collaborate effectively. No, you can do things that you just cannot do on your own. You get a group of people together and they create something that they couldn't do on their own at all. That collaboration is the key to success, in my opinion.
That sounds great. Now, I did give you a bit of homework to do. So there's 3 questions that I'm asking all my guests. The first one is, tell me one piece of advice you wish you had when you started out.
I think the one piece of advice that I wished I'd have had is don't fight everyone. And that takes me to a very traumatic court case where I took one of my clients who didn't want to pay, and I took them to court, and it was the most horrendous experience ever. And I've got a lot of friends around me that remind me, stop fighting all the battles, Michelle. So
Don't
it's still a
fight
lesson I have.
everyone, or don't fight anyone.
Don't fight everyone. Yeah, I was. I don't
Some
know.
fights worth having then.
Yeah, pick your fights. Yeah, pick your fights. Choose what's worth it. What resonates with you, and fight those fights, and leave the others to everyone else.
And the second question is one piece of well-meaning advice that you did have, but have chosen to ignore.
Oh my gosh, this one's easy. So many people said to me when I told them when I was setting up FizzBang what I was going to do and how I was going to be collaborative, everyone said, Michelle, don't trust anyone. Do not trust anyone. You've got to eat them before they eat you. So many people said that. Do you know what? I think they still must live in the 80s, because I've never had any advice mean so little to me. That has never been the case, ever. It's like that's the opposite of who I am. I trust everyone unless they prove me wrong. And it served me well.
You're never going to hear anyone say that in Asia or Africa or many other parts of the world, are you, though? It's very, very Western dualistic thinking that comes from.
Yeah.
And the 80s probably as well. Yeah, not a great decade for collaboration, I don't think.
Yeah.
And then my book, The Fourth Bottom Line, I've talked about 50 different leadership characteristics.
Yeah.
And I asked you to choose one that you think you most still need to work on. I mean, don't say all 50.
No, I looked down that list. I was quite proud of myself. I was like, I'm okay with that. Actually, the one that really sticks out for me is the solitary one. I'm really not good in my own company, not just my own company. And I reread, when I picked it out, I reread that chapter, and I'm just like, I still really struggle with that, and I don't know where it comes from, but I don't like my own company as much as maybe I should. Maybe
that time from not having any friends at school, perhaps.
Rub it in, why don't you, Paul?
I think that your collaboration will be more powerful if you did spend time on your own, because that's the being time, isn't it, when we refuel.
Yeah, but I don't know. Do you know what? I'm going to challenge that, Paul, and I'm going to say, I'm still going to say, when you're neurodivergent, there is very little solitary time, because you're always doing 2 or 3 things at once. So maybe my neurodivergence makes that particular thing more painful for me. I don't know. Yeah. It's made me think, and I am going to relook at that.
Let's leave it there. Thanks so much, Michelle, for joining us today. Thanks again for being a great guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Fourth Bottom Line. Please hit subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode, and leave a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about my work, follow me on LinkedIn, visit my website, paulhargreaves.co.uk, or look out for my 2 books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. Thank you for listening.